So similar to the story of Vari Energies, if you remember when we did a session on the art of picking multi-baggers, we did a story on Borosil Renewables, right? And you would have seen how the business scale up at Borosil Renewable happened when there was a import substitution that happened through the glass not getting dumped by China and the Indian government putting a ban on putting a duty on the imports, and the capacity ramp up that the Borosil group had, it scaled up from a 700 crores company to almost on the top it went up to 7,500 crores, from which it has corrected almost to 5,000 crores already. But if you look at the capacity ramp up that Borosil has done, even post that, so from 180 tons a day, the company has almost reached 500 tons, and with the new expansion which is going on stream, it will become 1000 tons a day capacity. From that, it had a journey to go towards 2000 tons a day, but because the government has not renewed the import restrictions or import duties, it is deferring its plans a bit. But at 1000 tons per day, it is still able to only service 5 to 7 gigawatts or 10 at max 10 gigawatts of the overall solar manufacturing module capacity in India. So it is not even 10% of what the next year's capacity of solar would be in terms of installations, right? So if you look at this 100 gigawatts of solar is slated to go almost 400-500 gigawatts of manufacturing capacity in the decade. And with that, if the Borosil Renewable Group can at least target 25% of the Indian market share, being the leader in the industry, and if it is able to reach the scale what the Chinese plants have reached, maybe the margins would not be which it had earlier, for the brief period when it had a dream run, had maybe gotten. But from 5%, maybe it went up to 45% margins. But even if it stabilizes at 20-25% margins, the scale opportunity which Borosil has in the coming 5, 7, 10 years is still fantastic, because the whole capacity of manufacturing solar modules in India would go up by 10x, and Borosil can actually go up 15x or 12, 13x, because it can increase market share even here from going forward from here. Though there are few competitors which are coming in the space, but there is a huge opportunity for everyone to grow, because the scale benefit will first accrue to Borosil and then to its competitors, which are almost a decade or 15 years behind what Borosil is today, right? So that as a scale opportunity you can find in a lot of ancillaries. So you can actually study the whole value chain. For example, we've done a private investment in a company called Navitas Alpha, which is manufacturing these EVA films, which is the layer which is there attached to the solar cells, which is the protective layer so that the cell doesn't get damaged and has to survive for almost 25 years. So the quality of the film defines what the generation of the solar power would be, and hence a very critical film which in a way is completely imported into India from China, and now you have 5 to 6 manufacturers which are taking the lead to make that film in India, right? So these are the opportunities which in fact can grow along with the manufacturing growth in India, and in fact can grow at a higher rate because they can eat into market share of China. And if the 10x capacity of module is happening, their capacities need to go 12, 15, 20x in fact, and hence the growth rate is higher, and the overall capacity cost or the capex required in such plants is in fact lower than the module plant sometimes, and hence can be a huge game changer for a lot of entrepreneurs which are working in that space, right?
अगर आप ये वीडियो देख रहे हो तो इसका मतलब ये है कि आप स्टॉक मार्केट ट्रेडिंग और इन्वेस्टिंग में इंटरेस्टेड हो। अगर आपको बहुत सारी ट्रेडिंग स्ट्रैटेजीज सच एज अल्गो ट्रेडिंग, फंडामेंटल एनालिसिस, टेक्निकल एनालिसिस के बारे में और जानना है, देन हेड ऑन टू Upsurge.club, जहाँ पे हमने हर कैटेगरीज के बारे में कोर्सेज बनाए हैं।
So talking of ancillaries, and we've always in our earlier sessions also recommended that you should use second order thinking whenever you think about a particular theme. So thinking about second order effects, if you would have noticed that in the beginning we told you that there's a huge shift towards the hybrid power plants where it will have wind, solar and storage, so that any EPC contractor, whenever it is making a solar power park, it has to make sure that there is steady power available 24/7 to be fed in the grid, or else the grid might have imbalances, and we've seen grids collapse around the world when there is an imbalanced power which is fed into the grid. So what do you need for this balanced power to be there? The hybrid power plants is the way to go, and hence lot of states post 2019 which were either heavy of wind or then have become heavy solar are now promoting a hybrid wind, solar and storage, which in a way will give more stability to the grid, right? So what happens in a hybrid plant is there is both wind and solar power equipments that are laid in the field, and along with that there is a room which has these batteries which store the energy whenever wind is generated more or whenever solar is generated more, so that it can supply to the grid when there is a slack, and which works beautifully well for the grid. And if you think about it, it is again leading to a lot of wind energy installations in our country, which had almost gone to very meager installations in 2019, 20, 21, 22. If you look at, our country had scaled up wind first, and we were running at a rate of 6-7 gigawatt in a year, which had gone down to 3, 2 and almost 1.5 gigawatt for the past 3-4 years. But now, because of the hybrid, you can say parks, there is again a need to have wind installations which are close to 4 to 5 gigawatts annually, and maybe will go up as the solar mix in the whole ecosystem goes up, right? So when you want to look at the ancillaries, again, the second order thinking tells you that you should look at the equipment manufacturers, right? But the equipment manufacturers like Suzlon are struggling because the balance sheet has gone for a toss. But if you look at, there are a lot of gear manufacturers, power cable manufacturers which go into the wind turbines, things like that can make a lot of sense, which in a way can do good if the overall wind installations go up. But a very simple way to play this sector is also through a crane rental company that we had identified, which is into installation of these wind energy equipment onto the farms, and hence its revenues are also linked to the fortunes of the wind energy industry. How? I'll just explain you. Any wind energy equipment, the turbine heights are increasing day by day, right? And these turbines need to go to the farm and be installed on that farm, right? And hence you need these huge cranes which can put up the structure together, and these are cranes which the project manufacturer executor is actually not purchasing, but he buys it on rent whenever he has a project to complete, because it doesn't make sense to keep these rent with him throughout the year because he's not having projects throughout the year, right? Hence there are companies which have ownership of these assets and they give it on rent whenever anyone wants to execute these projects, right? It is like an Ola which has a array of it is like an Ola who has a bouquet of cars available with it whenever someone wants to rent it, whenever they want to travel from one place to the other, right? Similarly, these crane rental companies, they have an array of cranes ranging from the height of the projects that you want to execute, and you can take them on rent as and when you want to execute the projects. And here we will learn a very important thing about cyclical investing also, because lot of businesses, they go through boom and bust cycles, and crane renting business is a typical boom and bust cycle, wherein whenever there is huge demand in the country to rent cranes, the rental yields go up, that is the rent that you need to pay to these crane companies go up. And whenever the demand goes out, the rental yields crash, and hence the earnings of these companies crash and their valuation goes for a toss. A typical case study of Sanghvi Movers over the past 20 years will give you a fair idea of this boom and bust cycle, where the company has gone from the bottom up almost 7-8x and fallen almost 70-80% in a couple of cycles. Now, why does this happen, right? If you understand that these crane renters have a bouquet of services that they provide, be it during the metro building in any city where the crane is required to build the platforms for the metros or put the metros on the platforms, or be it the projects which are done to make bridges which are through the river, or projects like steel making, cement industries, wherever there needs to be a large infrastructure project that needs to be executed, you need these cranes on those sites. Similarly to that, when you need to execute wind power projects, again you need these cranes to be on ground to execute the projects, right? So Sanghvi Movers, in cycles when wind energy was doing good in India, had almost 40 to 50% of its revenue coming from installation of wind farms, right? So the balance 50% used to come from other infrastructure projects, but the bulk of the revenue of this company or the fortune of this company was always linked to installation of wind farms or wind energy in India, right? Now what happened is that in the past, when Suzlon or other wind companies enjoyed the tax breaks in India, the installation of wind went up very fast, and hence the services of a Sanghvi Movers were in vogue, and because they gave out more cranes to be rented, their revenues went up and the stock went up from some 100 200 crores market cap to around 1000 1200 crores market cap. But what happened is, when these tax breaks went away and wind installations in India from 5-6 gigawatt, they went down to 1-2 gigawatt, the stock price of Sanghvi Movers similarly fell down. At least you can plot on the charts that as the installation of winds are falling down, the stock price is also crashing. So this is the cyclicality of the business, which leads to huge downfall, because now the asset yield, which had went up because of the demand of wind projects, completely crashes because Sanghvi has a lot of cranes to offer, but suddenly there is no demand in the market. But what has happened again post COVID is, a lot of other infrastructure projects in India, went up dramatically, right? If you are in any town in India, you might be seeing a lot of metros that are coming up in your city, or expansion of the metro lines are happening, right? So you need Sanghvi's cranes to put up metros. You need Sanghvi's cranes to put up bridges. You need Sanghvi's cranes to put up steel, cement plants everywhere. So there was an uptick in all these other sectors, but that was not enough to change the fortunes of the company. The major component that was required was that whether wind energy projects are also getting executed on ground, and that also picked up a bit, and that gave a huge boost in the business of Sanghvi Movers. To give you a small example, the rental yields of Sanghvi, which was just 1.2% or 1.5%, went up to 3.5% in the last cycle, when the huge flow of these tax changes made a lot of equipment manufacturers order a lot of cranes like Suzlon and the other companies. But that 3.5% yield crashed again to 1% when the demand was not there, because the cranes were lying idle. The companies even ready to rent them at a normal 1% yield a month. But when the demand is very high during those tax breaks, the rental yield went up to as high as 3.5% per month. That means almost 40% per annum, right? Now again, if you look at the yields, which had crashed to 1%, had gone back in 2023 back to 2.25%. So it is the same trajectory, and hence you see the market cap of the company also going up, because the earnings are moving up, and also the yields are going up. Hence there is a double effect on the earnings. Number of cranes, if they were 100 cranes and they were just deploying 50-60 cranes, they are now deploying 70-80 cranes. So the number of cranes that are being rented are going up. And B, the yield per crane, that is, if they were charging 1 crores per crane as rentals, now they are able to charge 2 crores or 2.2 crores because there's shortage of cranes, right? And during the downturn, a lot of competition of a Sanghvi, which were smaller players and couldn't survive, went out of the market. And Sanghvi, interestingly, has consolidated its position, and in fact, in cranes which can handle more than 130 meters kind of a height of the equipment, Sanghvi is a by far leader, which almost 85-90% market share, and he's consolidating his market share because he's been buying cranes of those capacities. And the height of wind towers is now increasing day by day, because on higher heights you get more velocity of wind and hence more power generation, right? So this is how you can also use your knowledge of the green energy and go to a cyclical industry which doesn't directly look like a renewable, but you apply your common sense of the yield structures, of the demand dynamics, and if the renewable theme is adding more business to a cyclical business like a crane renting, it still is far rewarding. And if you look at the stock of Sanghvi, it has already gone 7x, and still the company is delivering more on earnings. It still has room to have more yield, and it is still ordering more equipment because the demand in the economy is higher than what it was in the previous cycle, right? So these kind of cycles, they repeat again and again. You need to understand their structure, you need to understand their dynamics, and if you are clear with the financials, how they are moving along with a parameter, you can beautifully plot how the future can look at, and almost with accuracy of 70-80% try to benefit from the growth journey of these kind of businesses. So that was another case study that we wanted to convey, that how you can indirectly also participate in this, you can say, opportunity, even though you might have missed out on straightforward opportunities like a Borosil Renewable or like a Vari Energies, because it was unlisted or a private company, right? Thank you so much.